There are moments in life that you never forget, not because they're planned or perfect, but because something unexpected, something deeply unfair, throws your whole world off course until someone steps in and flips the script. So picture this. It's prom night. Lights strung across the gym, the hum of music pulsing through the air, corsages pinned just right, parents tearing up behind phone cameras. It's the night that high schoolers across the country dream of for months. And then, just like that, a girl standing at the doors of her school is told she can't come in. No warning. No explanation. Just rejection. Right in front of everyone. And what was her crime? Her dress. Yeah, you heard that right, her prom dress. But here's the part you won't believe. Minutes later, a black SUV pulls up to the curb, the crowd turns their heads, and out steps the mayor. That's when everything changes. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could a prom dress possibly have to do with the mayor? What could be so controversial about a teenager's outfit that it stirs up not just the whole school, but the entire town? You came here for answers, and I promise you're going to get them. But I want you to hang in with me for a moment, because this story is way deeper than it seems on the surface. This isn't just about fashion or school rules. This is about judgment, courage, the weight of first impressions, and how one bold act can set off a chain reaction that no one saw coming. This story is going to take you into the heart of a small American town, where people like to think they know everyone's business, until something happens that reveals just how little they understand. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like the world around you had already made up its mind about you before you had a chance to speak, then you're going to feel this one. Because let's be honest, we've all been there. Maybe it wasn't a prom dress. Maybe it was the way you spoke, the way you looked, the things you cared about that didn't quite fit the mold. And maybe someone made you feel small for it. That's why this video isn't just some viral moment or a trending headline, it's a mirror. It holds up a reflection of how we treat people who dare to show up differently. And here's the thing I want to be real about. The people in this story, they're not caricatures. They're real. They're messy, layered, human. The girl at the center of it all, her name is Mia, didn't set out to make a statement. She just wanted to feel beautiful on her prom night, to dance with her friends, to have that once-in-a-lifetime memory that people post about with hashtags like #PromGoals and #UnforgettableNight. But instead, she got humiliation. She got whispers. She got gatekeepers telling her she wasn't welcome. That's a wound you don't just shake off. But here's where it gets powerful, because Mia didn't walk away. She stood there, hurt but unbroken. And what happened next? It didn't just go viral. It sparked a local firestorm and got the attention of someone with real power, someone who could have ignored it, stayed silent, played politics. But instead, the mayor made a decision that shocked everyone and changed the entire narrative. Now, don't go anywhere, because what you think happened next probably isn't what actually happened. And if you think this is just another case of someone breaking the dress code, you're going to be stunned when you find out what Mia's dress really represented and why it was so threatening to the people at the door. This story pulls you into a world of double standards, hidden agendas, and quiet acts of rebellion that suddenly become headlines. And if you've got kids, or you've ever been to a high school dance yourself, it's going to hit closer to home than you expect. I want to pause for a second and talk to you, not just as someone watching another YouTube video, but as someone who probably clicked this because something about the title grabbed your gut. Because deep down, you know this story matters. You know this stuff still happens all across the US, in towns just like yours. Girls getting judged for what they wear. Boys getting praised for breaking rules while girls get punished for standing out. Schools making calls not based on fairness, but on image. And here's the kicker. Sometimes, it takes someone outside the system, someone with nothing to lose, to call it out. And yeah, this video might go viral. It might get shared with hashtags like #JusticeForMia or #PromScandal. But I don't care about views for the sake of views. I care about truth. I care about making sure the people who are always told to tone it down or follow the rules finally get their stories told. And that's why I need you to stick with me. Don't just hear the headline and move on. Watch till the end, because I'm going to show you not just what happened, but why it happened, and how one choice by one person can turn the tide. You're about to meet Mia's best friend, who caught the whole moment on her phone, the vice principal who stood firm at the door, the prom chaperones who tried to smooth things over, and the local reporter who was tipped off about a prom controversy before anyone else knew the story had legs. And, of course, the mayor. A name you'll never forget after what they did that night. Trust me, you're going to want to see that part for yourself. So buckle up, because this story isn't just going to move fast. It's going to hit hard. It's going to make you question what rules are really for and who gets to make them. And by the time we get to the end, you might just find yourself rethinking the next time you judge someone for being bold, different, or just true to themselves. But for now, we're standing on the steps of that high school gym. Mia's still outside, trying to hold back tears. Her friends are arguing with staff. People are taking out their phones. The crowd is growing. And just when it feels like things couldn't get worse, that black SUV slows to a stop. Doors open. Suits step out. The mayor steps forward. And what happens in the next 60 seconds? It turns the whole town upside down. Before that black SUV pulled up to the curb and shifted the entire mood of prom night, there was only one name buzzing through the tense crowd: Mia Thompson. And not because she was class president, homecoming queen, or some social media star with 1 million followers. Mia was something more complicated than all of that. She was known, sure, but known in that way that made people uncomfortable. Smart, yes. Articulate. Not afraid to ask questions, challenge authority, or wear what she wanted without apologizing. In a small suburban town where most people preferred things neat and predictable, Mia had always been a bit of a disruptor. Not because she wanted attention, but because pretending to be someone she wasn't felt like a prison. And the thing about Mia? She noticed everything. People's reactions, their side glances, the passive-aggressive comments. She'd learned how to navigate it, but that night, it caught up with her. What most people didn't realize was that Mia had been through a lot that year. Just 2 months before prom, she had posted a video to TikTok. Nothing outrageous, just her talking honestly about the school's double standards when it came to dress code. In it, she pointed out that girls were being pulled out of class for bare shoulders, while boys wore tank tops without consequences. The video went viral, hundreds of thousands of views, comments flooding in from teens across the US saying, "This is happening at my school too," and "Thank you for speaking out." But back home, the reaction was split. Some teachers quietly agreed. Some students whispered support in the hallway. But others? They weren't so subtle. There were rumors that certain staff members weren't happy with Mia calling them out. Suddenly, she found herself monitored. Her attendance got flagged for the smallest tardy. Teachers who once smiled began treating her like a troublemaker. Something had shifted, and Mia felt it. At the same time, she had started dating someone new, Ethan, a quiet guy in her art class who didn't really fit into any clique. He was soft-spoken, creative, and the kind of guy who sketched doodles on the back of tests instead of playing varsity sports. A lot of people didn't understand why Mia was with him, but to her, he was a break from all the drama. They bonded over shared playlists and after-school coffee shop meetups, and he encouraged her to keep speaking up when others told her to stay quiet. But even that relationship became another talking point. Some said Ethan's older brother had issues with the school board, something about a past suspension or a failed appeal that made waves years ago. The kind of family that didn't quite fit into the school's model student image. Whether that had anything to do with what happened at prom, nobody could say for sure. But whispers had a way of taking root. Then there was the dress itself. Mia designed it herself. She didn't want to buy some off-the-rack prom dress that cost $300 and looked like every other satin and sequin number. She had spent weeks piecing it together, drawing inspiration from her grandmother's vintage photos and putting her own twist on it. It was bold, yes. It had deep colors, layered textures, and a silhouette that felt more runway than high school gym. But it was tasteful, beautiful. It didn't break any stated rules, no inappropriate cuts, nothing sheer or revealing. Yet when she arrived, the chaperones didn't even hesitate. One glance, one quiet word exchanged between administrators, and then the shutout. "You're not appropriately dressed for this event," was all they said. She asked for clarification and none was given. She wasn't allowed to argue, not even let inside. And here's where things get murky. Some students claimed they overheard a teacher saying, "We can't let her turn this into another TikTok stunt." Others said someone on the parent committee had a problem with Mia ever since that video went viral. And a few even said they saw the vice principal on a call just before Mia arrived, looking anxious and glancing repeatedly at the entrance. But no one knew for sure who made the call. No one stepped forward to take responsibility. That's when the crowd started growing. Phones came out. Snapchat stories lit up. Hashtags started forming on Instagram. Hashtag let me in. Hashtag promgate. Hashtag dress not drama. It was spiraling fast. And just as things began tipping from awkward to explosive, that SUV arrived. The mayor, Laura Bennett, wasn't just any politician. She had roots in the town, graduated from the same high school, knew the pressure cooker of small-town politics all too well. She'd been elected on a platform of progress, inclusivity, listening to the unheard. But lately, her approval had slipped. There were whispers about internal conflicts, unpopular budget decisions, and allegations that she wasn't doing enough to support students' voices in education. So when she stepped out of that SUV, some people thought it was a PR stunt. Others said she had been tipped off by someone in Mia's family. And a few claimed that the mayor had personal history with one of the teachers involved and was there to settle an old score. The theories were piling up, and every single one added another layer to the mystery. Ethan, standing quietly by Mia's side, looked like he was ready to fight the whole system for her. But his presence raised questions too. Why was he so composed while Mia looked blindsided? Was it because he had known something like this would happen? Did he try to warn her not to wear that dress? Or did he help her design it, knowing it would cause a stir? There were students who believed Ethan's brother, now working as an independent journalist, might have fed this story to local news before it even happened. That maybe this wasn't just about a dress, but a calculated protest. Mia never said anything to suggest that. But the speculation didn't stop. Even the school's response added fuel to the fire. No clear statements. No explanation. Just a blanket "rules are rules" excuse posted hours later on their social media, which only inflamed things further. Because people wanted details. Proof. Why was Mia singled out when other students wore outfits that pushed the dress code even more? Who decided she was a threat? And more importantly, what were they so afraid of? As night fell and the prom inside carried on without her, the world outside the school gym was growing louder. TikTok was flooding with videos. YouTube creators were reacting in real time. Reddit threads were forming under titles like "Girl Gets Banned from Prom for Outfit," "Mayor Intervenes," and "High School Scandal Exposed." But the truth? It was still buried. And everyone had their own version of what really happened. And now, with the mayor standing there, face unreadable, eyes scanning the crowd, tension in the air was razor sharp. No one knew what she would say. No one expected her to say what she actually did. But before she could even open her mouth, a familiar face from inside the school pushed through the doors and stepped into the spotlight. A face that no one had seen all night. And what that person carried in their hand. It changed everything. As the crowd leaned forward, breaths held and phones raised, the doors to the school opened just enough to let a narrow beam of fluorescent light spill onto the steps. Out walked Mrs. Kensington, the longtime guidance counselor, someone who, until that moment, no one even realized was working the prom. She wasn't exactly a central figure in the drama up to this point, but her sudden appearance now, clutching a crumpled envelope and looking visibly shaken, pulled the attention away from even the mayor. Her expression wasn't one of anger or authority, it was fear. She glanced around, as if unsure whether she was making a mistake. She looked at Mia, then at the mayor, and finally down at the envelope in her hands. What happened next was so subtle that most people missed it in real time. Someone from inside the school reached out from behind the door, whispered something to her, and in a single second, Mrs. Kensington folded the envelope and handed it back. Just like that, she turned and disappeared inside, without a word. That envelope? It never came back out. What was inside? Nobody knew. But something in Mia's gut told her it mattered, and that someone didn't want her to see it. And that's when things really started to shift. Up until that moment, everything had been visible, heated, yes, but public. Now, there was a quiet undercurrent pulling the story into a darker place. The kind of place where truths are buried under layers of "it's complicated and you wouldn't understand." People started pulling back. Those who had been filming were suddenly approached by school staff, asking them to stop recording. A few of the students who had backed Mia earlier now looked away, mumbling that they didn't want to get involved. Even Ethan seemed different, his jaw clenched, eyes darting toward the building like he was expecting something. Or someone. Mia's phone buzzed with a new message. An anonymous account on Instagram had sent her a warning. Stop pushing. You're not ready for what you'll find. There was no profile picture, no followers, no context. But the timing was too specific to ignore. She showed it to Ethan, hoping he'd give her some reassurance, but instead of reacting with concern, he just stared at it for a long moment before quietly asking if she'd told anyone else about what happened at homecoming last fall. That question hit her like a slap. She hadn't thought about that night in months, had tried to forget it, actually, but the mention of it sent a chill through her. How did Ethan even know? That incident wasn't public. It involved a student who was quietly suspended, rumors about a cheating scandal, and a mysterious last-minute vote change in the student council election that Mia had run in and lost by just 2 votes. There had been whispers about a faculty member manipulating the results, but it had all been brushed under the rug. Now it was back. And the way Ethan asked the question, so casual, like he was testing her, made her start to question everything. Who had really told the mayor to show up? How had Ethan known where to stand and what to say when things started spiraling? Why had he been so calm when the rest of her world was collapsing? Even more disturbing was what happened the next morning. Mia, determined not to be silenced, went to the school office first thing. She asked to review the official prom guest list and dress code rules, documents that should have been easy to provide. But the secretary at the front desk fumbled her words, saying the lists hadn't been finalized or had been misplaced. That didn't make sense. The dance had already happened. Then Mia asked to speak with Mrs. Kensington. She was told that the guidance counselor had taken a sudden leave of absence. Effective immediately. No explanation. No goodbye. It was becoming obvious that something was being hidden, something bigger than a dress or a viral video. Every question Mia asked hit a wall. Even her favorite teacher, Mr. Crane, who had always supported her, now seemed distant. When she asked if he'd seen what happened, he hesitated and said, "Some things are better left alone, Mia. You've stirred up enough already." The betrayal hit harder than she expected. This was a teacher who had encouraged her to speak out, who helped her craft that very TikTok video that got so much attention. Now, suddenly, he was urging her to drop it? It didn't stop there. That night, Mia logged into the cloud folder where she stored all her dress design notes, photos, and sketches, the timeline she had built to defend herself in case she was accused of violating any rules. It was gone. Every file. Deleted. She hadn't shared the password with anyone, but someone had accessed it. The only clue left behind was a single photo that hadn't been there before, a picture of her standing outside the prom, timestamped to the moment she was turned away. No caption. Just the image surveilled. She confronted Ethan again, demanding answers. He denied everything, claimed he didn't know what she was talking about. But the way his voice cracked, the way he looked away, she didn't buy it. Something was off. She began to question if Ethan had been pulled into this behind the scenes. Was someone using him to keep tabs on her? Was he being manipulated, or worse, willingly involved? And just when she thought she was hitting the bottom of it all, another twist. A former student, someone she barely knew but had followed her prom posts online, reached out with a DM. His message was simple, but it changed everything. "You're not the first. They did this in 2019 too. Meet me tomorrow. But don't tell anyone." And with that, the mystery deepened. The next morning arrived cloaked in a strange, uneasy quiet that blanketed Mia's neighborhood. She hadn't slept much. Her mind kept spinning through what the anonymous message had said. "You're not the first. They did this in 2019 too." That year meant nothing to her at first, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was a key she hadn't used yet. After quickly getting ready, She made her way to the coffee shop where she'd agreed to meet the former student. She arrived early, scanning every person who walked in, eyes searching for a face that seemed familiar. She didn't even know who she was looking for. Then someone slid into the seat across from her, without saying a word at first, just placed a phone on the table and hit play. The grainy footage was old, probably taken from a low-end Android, but the voices were clear enough. A young girl, maybe 17, stood crying outside the same high school building, wearing a long crimson gown that now looked hauntingly similar to Mia's. It wasn't identical, but it had the same handmade style, the same bold flair. She was arguing with someone just off camera, a male voice that sounded eerily like the former principal. Mia listened in disbelief as the man said the words, "You were warned this wouldn't be acceptable. We told your family." The girl kept insisting she hadn't been warned. The video cut off just as another adult stepped in and pulled the student away. "That girl was me," said the former student whose name, she now learned, was Jade Ramirez. "But they buried my story before it could go anywhere. Said I violated the code, said I forged signatures on my guest pass. None of it was true." Mia's heart pounded. Jade's story was almost identical to hers, but what made it more chilling was the next thing she revealed. The same staff members were involved. The same guidance counselor. Even the same security guard who had stood beside the door the night Mia was denied entry had also been caught on video that night in 2019, playing the same silent enforcer role. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. A pattern of control, silence, and possibly discrimination that had gone unchecked for years. As Mia processed all of this, her phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't her own inbox. It was a screenshot sent by her best friend Lana, who had stayed home sick the night of prom. Lana had just received an anonymous message too, and the contents were startling. It read, "She doesn't know about Ethan's real role, does she?" Attached was a blurry photo of Ethan sitting in the school library with a laptop, speaking with a teacher Mia didn't recognize at first. But Lana did. That teacher had been transferred into the school just months before. According to rumors, he wasn't just a literature teacher. He had previously worked in admin at another district, one known for political cover-ups in their school board. Suddenly, Mia wasn't sure who Ethan really was to her. He had always been there when she needed someone, but maybe he was placed there. Maybe she was being watched long before she ever tried on that dress. More troubling still was what Lana discovered on her own. She had started digging through archived school newsletters and stumbled across something that didn't add up. In 2019, there had been no official documentation of a prom. No photos, no list of winners, no recognition of the event in any calendar. It was like that year's prom had been erased. The students remembered it happening, but the school's records pretended it never existed. Why would an entire year of prom be wiped from existence, unless something happened they didn't want the public to see? As if things weren't already spiraling, Mia's mother came home that evening visibly rattled. She'd received a call at work from a blocked number. The voice on the other end calmly stated, "You need to tell your daughter to let this go. For her safety. And yours." They didn't give a name, but they knew where her mom worked. They mentioned specific details, her role in the finance department, the make of her car, even the time she usually took her lunch break. That level of surveillance meant this wasn't just a student drama anymore. It was personal. It was calculated. And it was dangerous. The deeper they went, the more twisted everything became. People Mia had trusted for years were acting strangely, avoiding her in the hallways, whispering when she passed. Even her art teacher, who once proudly featured her designs on the classroom wall, had quietly removed her project from display. Nobody gave a reason. Nobody wanted to talk. It was as if the entire school had been pulled into some shadowy pact, one rooted in silence and fear. Mia wasn't just fighting to defend her right to attend prom anymore. She was unraveling a multi-year cover-up that had its hands in faculty, administration, and possibly even the local government. And still, the question remained. Why? What was so threatening about her dress, her voice, her defiance, that it warranted this kind of orchestrated resistance? Just as she prepared to meet with Jade again to start planning their next steps, something unexpected happened. An envelope was slid under her front door. No address, no return name. Inside was a printed photo of Jade and Mia walking together earlier that day. Someone had followed them. But that wasn't the worst part. Tucked behind the photo was a small card with 4 simple words that sent shivers down her spine. Jade isn't who you think. And just like that, everything she thought she was beginning to understand fell into question again. It was well past midnight when Mia woke up to the sound of tires crunching slowly over gravel. Her bedroom window overlooked the narrow cul-de-sac at the end of their street, usually quiet, especially on a weeknight, but this time, a black SUV she didn't recognize had parked under the broken streetlight. The engine stayed running. The lights were off. No one got out. At first, she tried to dismiss it as coincidence, maybe someone waiting for a friend. But 20 minutes passed, then 40. Her fingers gripped the windowsill so tight her knuckles went pale. Something about the way the car just sat there, humming in the dark like a predator, made the air in her room feel thinner. She backed away from the window and shut the curtains without turning around, afraid that if she looked too long, someone inside might see her, might know she was watching. Sleep was impossible after that. Every creak of the house sounded like a footstep. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should. Her phone buzzed again around 2:03 a.m., a new text from an unlisted number. "You're not safe. Back off, or you won't be able to graduate." That line hit her harder than the rest. Not because she feared failing school, but because whoever sent it knew exactly what would scare her most: her future. Her ticket out. Her plan to go to fashion school in New York after graduation was all she had been working toward for years. And now it was being used as leverage, a threat to keep her quiet. By morning, the SUV was gone, but the unease lingered like a smell that wouldn't leave the room. At school, things only got worse. Jade didn't show up for their planned meeting during lunch. At first, Mia thought maybe she'd gotten cold feet, or her schedule changed. But by the end of the day, Jade hadn't answered any texts or calls. She tried reaching out on Instagram and got the error: "User not found." It was like she'd vanished overnight. Panic set in quickly, curling around her spine like ice. Jade had mentioned a storage locker where she kept old school files, videos, and notes from her own investigation back in 2019. Mia didn't have the address, only a rough idea of the location, but by dusk she was already on her bike pedaling hard down back roads, searching for clues to a place she wasn't even sure existed. The storage facility sat behind an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town, hidden behind a rusted gate and chain-link fence. It didn't look like anyone had been there in years, but the code on the keypad still worked. She guessed the numbers based on something Jade had said earlier. Every truth starts with a date they tried to erase: 042019. The gate creaked open, revealing rows of storage units and peeling paint under buzzing fluorescent lights. She moved fast, heart pounding in her chest as she searched the rows. When she found the right one, the lock was gone, cut cleanly, as if someone else had already gotten there. Inside, there was nothing left but an empty chair, a smashed flash drive on the floor, and a single sheet of paper taped to the far wall. It had one word scrawled across it in red Sharpie: "Watched." She stumbled back, every instinct in her body screaming to run. But the paper wasn't the only thing that caught her eye. Just outside the door of the unit, stuck under a loose piece of gravel, was Jade's bracelet. Mia recognized it immediately. It had tiny red beads spelling out hope in all caps. Jade had worn it every day since they met. Now it was here, alone, with no sign of her anywhere. Driving back home felt like being pulled underwater. Her thoughts came in bursts. Memories of how happy she'd been planning her dress, her night, the freedom she'd once felt when she believed the world was still fair. Now, everything felt staged. Like her life was being directed by someone else, someone she couldn't see, but who knew her every move. She kept looking in the rearview mirror, but there were no headlights behind her. Still, the feeling of being followed didn't fade. The paranoia was no longer just emotional, it had taken root in her muscles and her bones. By the time she got home, her mom was waiting on the porch. She was crying, not just scared, but visibly shaken, as if something had happened while Mia was gone. "They called again," her mother said in a broken whisper. "They know about your scholarship. They said if we push this any further, they'll accuse you of theft. They'll ruin your name, your future. They even mentioned your father's old job. How do they know these things? That was the question echoing loudest in Mia's mind. How much access did these people have? How long had they been watching her and her family? Was this really about a dress? Or had the dress simply become the battleground for something deeper, some unspoken war between those who controlled the rules and those who tried to stand outside them? She barely slept that night. Her phone battery had drained for no reason, and even after charging, it wouldn't turn back on. When she checked the family computer the next morning, the browser history had been wiped, and the Wi-Fi password had been changed. She asked her mom if she'd done it, but her mom hadn't touched it. That left one answer. Someone had been in their home. Still, the final blow came later that day, when she checked her school email and found an official message from the district board. She was being summoned to an emergency disciplinary hearing, accused of hacking into school servers and distributing false media. Attached was a fabricated screenshot of a chat log that she had never written, claiming responsibility for the leaked video of Jade and threatening more attacks unless she was allowed to attend prom on her terms. It was a complete lie, but it was enough to look real. Enough to justify suspending her. Enough to destroy her name. She was being erased just like Jade. And whoever was behind it was only just getting started. Just when it felt like everything was closing in. When Mia believed she'd reached the point of no return, cornered by lies, threats, and a system that seemed designed to swallow her whole, a single, unmarked envelope slid under her front door changed everything. There was no stamp, no return address, just her name in block letters. Inside was a USB drive wrapped in a strip of black velvet, the kind you'd find at a jewelry counter. Her fingers trembled as she plugged it into her laptop, praying it wouldn't be another trap. The folder opened with a chime, revealing one file, a video labeled Mayoral Records _backlog. At first glance, it seemed like boring government footage, clips of town meetings, budget discussions, public hearings, but then she saw it. Her prom. Her name. Her dress. And something else, a side meeting, off the books, recorded on what appeared to be a hidden security feed. Mia leaned closer, heart thudding in her chest. There he was. The mayor. Not in his usual press-friendly demeanor, but speaking in hushed, agitated tones to a group of school board members behind closed doors. The video was grainy, but the audio had been enhanced. "She's digging too deep," he said. "And if she finds what we buried after that fundraiser, it won't just be a scandal. It'll be prison time." Another man's voice chimed in, one Mia recognized from school announcements. It was the vice principal. "Then make it look like a dress code violation," he said coldly. "That's how we've done it before. Keep it small. Keep it clean." Mia's breath caught. They hadn't denied her entry because of her outfit. They'd used her as a smokescreen to cover up something much bigger, something that had nothing to do with fashion or rules, and everything to do with fraud, money, and secrets kept in shadows. Her mind reeled. How many others had been silenced like this before her? How many cover-ups had been dismissed as disciplinary action or student misconduct? But even as she processed the shock of that revelation, something else nagged at her. Why now? Why would someone leak this to her at this exact moment? She didn't have to wait long for an answer. That night, while scrolling through her encrypted messages, she received another alert from a contact saved only as observer. It was Jade, or at least someone using her name. The message was short, direct. "Meet me at locker 243. Don't tell anyone." Her school locker. The one she hadn't opened in days. Her hands shook as she turned the dial on the lock the next morning, expecting what? A note? A recording? But nothing could have prepared her for what was inside. It wasn't a message, it was a journal. Jade's journal. Filled with entries dating back to her sophomore year. But this wasn't just a diary of feelings and high school crushes. These were detailed observations, schedules, names, receipts. And one name appeared again and again, circled in red. Mia Delgado. Page after page tracked her class changes, her friendships, even her involvement with the prom committee. The deeper Mia read, the more it became clear Jade had been investigating her long before they'd become friends. Then came the twist that made her stomach drop. Tucked into one of the back pages was a printed photo of Mia's father. The caption read, "Key fundraiser donor, 2019, linked to irregular school budget audits." Her father? The man who had always warned her to be careful about authority. The man who'd left town on short notice years ago after being laid off? Jade had suspected him of being involved in the very corruption Mia was now fighting to expose. But if that was true, then what was Jade's real motive in helping her? Everything she thought she knew began to unravel. What if Jade wasn't a victim? What if she disappeared not because she was silenced, but because she was trying to hide her own trail? And who really sent the USB? Was it Jade, or someone who wanted to pit them against each other? Mia now stood in the middle of a puzzle that bent in on itself. Every truth revealed led to another lie. Every ally started to look like a threat. Even her own memories couldn't be trusted. She stared at the journal, her hands clammy, her thoughts spiraling. The people she was up against weren't just officials. They were architects of a carefully built illusion, one that used the appearance of order to hide rot beneath. And now she had to ask herself the hardest question yet. Had she been manipulated from the very start? Had her fight for justice become someone else's weapon? And just as that thought struck, her phone buzzed one more time. A new message. No number. Just a single line. "You're too close. Don't open what you can't close." Mia stared at her phone long after the screen dimmed, her mind spiraling into a storm of doubt, rage, and disbelief. That message, short, chilling, and anonymous, gnawed at her from the inside out. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning, a promise. But from who? And why now, just as everything was beginning to make twisted sense? Her instinct screamed for her to walk away, to protect herself, to stop digging before she unearthed something too devastating to bury again. But then she remembered Jade's journal, the entries about her father, the lies stacked like bricks behind every adult she once trusted, and the video of the mayor making backdoor deals with school officials. The line between truth and betrayal had blurred so completely that she no longer knew where safety even lived. She found herself standing outside her mom's bedroom door later that night, fists clenched at her sides, heart thudding so violently she was sure it echoed through the walls. There had been something off in her mother's reaction ever since prom night, an unease in her eyes that didn't match her words. It was as if she knew more than she was saying, and now, after everything Mia had uncovered, that silence felt suffocating. When she finally knocked, her mother opened the door slowly, face tired, eyes wary, like she had been waiting for this moment. Without pretense, Mia held up the journal and whispered, "Why is Dad in here? Why was he funding the school when he claimed he lost everything?" Her mother froze, lips parting in a breath that seemed to collapse before it could form words. "Mia, I was hoping you'd never see that," she said, sinking onto the edge of the bed. And in the dim yellow light of the nightstand lamp, the truth began to unravel in fragments and whispers. Her father hadn't left town because he lost his job. He left because he was forced out after refusing to sign off on a budget report that covered up financial discrepancies tied to school funding. He had threatened to go public, but within days, surveillance footage was leaked showing him in a compromising situation, one Mia's mother swore was doctored. "He was silenced," she said. "And we were warned. If we talked, if we fought it, you'd be the one to pay the price." Mia felt like the ground beneath her had been ripped out. Everything she believed about her family, her past, her own father, it was all buried beneath threats and secrets. And now, as she sat across from her mother, realizing she had been protected by silence rather than truth, the choice before her grew agonizingly clear. She could keep going, push harder, expose everything, and risk unraveling what little safety remained. Or she could stop, burn the journal, erase the USB, and pretend like this had never happened. But then came the ultimatum. An email, this time not anonymous, sent from the office of the superintendent. It was curt, professional, but its meaning was razor-sharp. "We understand you may be in possession of school property and confidential information. Failure to return said items or disclose how they were obtained will result in disciplinary and legal action against both you and your legal guardian. Please comply within 48 hours. That wasn't a bluff. It was pressure, polished, official, and terrifying. Now the consequences were no longer hypothetical. If she chose truth, her mother could be implicated. Her future, college applications, scholarships, her reputation would be crushed. But if she chose silence, she'd be abandoning everyone else who had suffered quietly under the system, just like her father had. She wanted to scream, to run, to forget everything and go back to being the girl who just wanted to dance at her prom. But that girl didn't exist anymore. Not after what she'd seen. Not after what she knew. And as she stared at the blinking cursor on her laptop, hovering over an encrypted message box, a single name flashed in her mind. Alex. Her best friend. The one person who had stood by her since middle school, who had warned her early on to be careful. She had brushed him off as paranoid, but what if he had known something? What if he was connected to this too? She didn't want to suspect him, but the paranoia was too loud now to ignore. When she messaged him, his reply came unusually fast. I've been waiting for you to ask me that, he said. Meet me at the greenhouse. Midnight. Come alone. And just like that, the lines blurred further. Who could she trust now? What did Alex know that he hadn't said? And why did it feel like every step forward led her deeper into a maze where even her oldest friendships came with shadows? The air inside the old greenhouse was damp and heavy, thick with the scent of earth and wilted plants, but Mia barely noticed. Her pulse pounded against her ribs as she stepped over the cracked stone path, every creak of the glass overhead echoing like a warning. Alex was already there, leaning against a rusted metal table with a look she'd never seen before, too calm, too collected, like he'd been rehearsing this moment long before she ever suspected anything. She hesitated just inside the entrance, not sure if she was walking into a confession or a trap. You said you've been waiting for me to ask, she began, her voice quiet but firm. So talk. Alex didn't flinch. He just looked at her like he wanted to apologize for something he wasn't ready to say out loud. You weren't supposed to find the journal, he said finally, eyes dropping to the floor. And I definitely wasn't supposed to let you keep digging. Mia's chest tightened as his words landed. She had been ready for secrets, even half-truths, but not this. Not from Alex. Her childhood best friend. Her confidant. The one person she believed would stand by her no matter what. He went on before she could speak, voice strained. I didn't want it to get to this point. I swear I tried to protect you. But my dad, he's on the school board. He's been feeding information to the mayor's office for years.
He's not just a pawn, Mia.
He's part of it. It hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about dress codes or prom discrimination. It wasn't even about school politics. It was about control, layers of it, woven through funding, surveillance, student files, and carefully orchestrated manipulation. The system had been quietly tracking problem students for years, flagging them based on behavior, appearance, social media activity, even family history. Mia's outspokenness had landed her on that list a long time ago. The dress was just an excuse, something visible, something they could point to without exposing the deeper rot beneath it all. And now, the scope of it was too big to unsee. Teachers, parents, school board officials, even local business leaders, they were all in on it, or at least complicit by silence. Those who resisted were pushed out or discredited. Just like her father. Just like the guidance counselor who mysteriously retired last semester after raising concerns about the school's disciplinary practices. And Alex had known for months. He hadn't been protecting her. He'd been monitoring her, reporting back, not out of malice, but out of fear. They threaten my family, he said, barely above a whisper. If I didn't keep tabs on you, they would have made my little brother disappear. Mia felt sick. Not just with betrayal, but with the realization that this was never about her alone. There were others. So many others. Students expelled for attitude problems, girls disciplined for dress code violations that barely broke the rules, boys suspended for speaking up in class, kids whose futures were quietly redirected without ever understanding why. It was systematic, coordinated, and now she was tangled in it so deeply, she couldn't tell where the lies ended and the danger began. But what shattered her completely was what Alex said next. They're planning something bigger. The files you found? They're just surface level. The real data is stored on a secure drive at the district office, something the mayor uses to leverage votes, donations, even blackmail. And they know you're close to exposing it. His voice cracked then, and for the first time, Mia saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of her. Fear for her. They're watching you, Mia.
Right now.
Every move. A sharp noise from outside made them both freeze. A silhouette passed across the greenhouse window, and Mia ducked instinctively. Whoever it was, they weren't hiding anymore. The message was clear. The warning had passed. Now it was action. She looked at Alex, the weight of what she had to do settling in her bones like lead. The truth had to come out. But doing that meant risking everything, her safety, her future, maybe even her life. And time was running out. The rain had started again, pounding against the high windows of the old civic center like fists desperate to be heard, but Mia couldn't afford to flinch anymore. She was soaked, her sneakers squelching with every step, but her grip on the flash drive Alex had given her was like iron. It was real. She had the evidence. The mayor's private server backups, the surveillance notes, the flagged student profiles, every name, every dirty deal, every abuse of power traced, cataloged, and buried in digital vaults they never expected her to find. Her heart thundered as she stepped into the darkened hall. Every light above flickering like the place itself was struggling to breathe. She wasn't just a high school girl who wore the wrong dress anymore. She was the threat they never saw coming. In the center of the room stood Mayor Easton, poised behind a sleek podium flanked by two stern-faced guards, flanked again by reporters and board members, buzzing with confusion. Mia was supposed to stay quiet. This meeting wasn't public. But she'd hacked the broadcast feed and uploaded everything she had to the school district server. By now, hundreds, maybe thousands, of viewers were watching live, their phones lighting up with a headline that cut straight through the lies. Prom scandal leads to secret surveillance program in local schools, exclusive evidence released. Her hands trembled as she stepped forward, the zip drive clenched in one palm like a loaded weapon. The mayor turned at the sight of her, a thin, amused smile stretching across his face like he still believed he could talk his way out of it. "You really think people will care about a dress?" he said, voice calm, confident, with that greasy politician tone that made Mia want to scream. "This isn't some Netflix drama, sweetheart. It's a city. It runs on deals, compromise, and loyalty. Something your generation doesn't understand." But Mia didn't blink. Because what she understood, what everyone watching would now see, was that he wasn't just some corrupt figurehead. He was the architect, the puppet master. And she was finally holding the scissors. The moment cracked when Principal Rose stormed into the hall, shouting for the cameras to stop, for the live stream to be killed, but it was too late. The tech kid Mia had looped in from her journalism class had locked the feed. She raised her phone high and played the first audio clip. The mayor's voice came through clear. "If she keeps pushing, we label her disruptive. Just like the others. Spin it. Use her dad's record." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Faces paled. One of the board members turned and walked straight out. Another pulled out his phone, hands shaking. Mia didn't stop. She played the next file, the one where Easton approved the student profiling program, calling it a preemptive solution to behavioral liability. He laughed at the end. That laugh would haunt her forever. Everything that followed happened in a blur. Easton lunged for her, but the guards hesitated just long enough. One of the cameras swung sharply toward the chaos, catching every second as she backed away, holding the flash drive up like a torch. "You're done," she said, voice sharp with adrenaline and fury. "This town deserves the truth. And tonight, they're finally getting it." But just when it seemed like the fight was over, like the cards had fallen and justice was about to win, the twist hit, harder than any of them expected. From the back of the hall, a calm, deliberate clap rang out, slow and sarcastic. A woman stepped forward, elegant, older, familiar in a way Mia couldn't place until she saw the name tag pinned to her blouse. L. Carrington, State Superintendent. Her smile was sharper than Easton's. "Impressive show, young lady," she said. "Very compelling. But I'm afraid the mayor's policies were authorized at the state level. We've had our eye on your district for some time." He was simply following orders. The silence was absolute. Even Easton looked blindsided. Mia stood frozen, trying to process what that meant. This wasn't just local. It wasn't even just the town. This system, this silent machine of control and manipulation, ran deeper than she ever imagined. And now that she had exposed it, she wasn't just a threat to a corrupt mayor. She was a target of something far bigger. Her victory had triggered a war she hadn't even known was waiting. And the cameras were still rolling. The storm had finally passed. The night was still, save for the hum of streetlights flickering to life across the city. Mia stood in the quiet aftermath, her phone silent in her hand for the first time in what felt like weeks. The live stream had been cut abruptly after the confrontation with Superintendent Carrington, and by now, the world had likely shifted gears. People would talk, dissect every detail of what had happened in that hall. The press had already turned its attention to the story, but for Mia, the reality of what she had done was beginning to settle in. She had done what no one thought possible. She had exposed the lies, torn through the veils of corruption that had run unchecked for years. She'd forced people to see the ugly truth, a truth that was now forever burned into the public consciousness. Yet, as she stood there, looking at the darkened streets stretching before her, the weight of it all felt heavier than any victory she could have imagined. Alex, who had been her rock through the worst of the storm, had disappeared. His family had left town under the guise of taking a break for a few weeks, but Mia knew the truth. They were running. The mayor's reach was far, and he had many loyal allies, some of whom would never let the story rest. But Alex wasn't the only one who paid the price. The ripple effects of the scandal had left people shaken, and while some of the guilty would face their reckoning, others had slipped away, untouched by the exposure. Mia's father, the one man who had always supported her no matter what, had been dragged back into the public eye as the media covered every angle of the story. The whispers about his past, the shadows that had followed him for so long, had resurfaced. For a moment, she questioned whether the truth was really enough, whether it could truly bring about change when the world was so quick to forget. But then she thought about the kids at school, those who were no longer invisible, who were no longer just names on a list. They'd seen her stand up.
They had seen someone fight for them.
That, Mia realized, was the true power of what she'd done. It wasn't about the mayor's downfall or the corruption she'd uncovered. It was about the message she'd sent, a message that no matter how powerful the system, there was always room for a voice to break through. As the weeks rolled on, the media continued to cover the story, and though the mayor was eventually removed from office, his allies remained hidden in the shadows, waiting for the next opportunity to regain control. The town was left in a fractured state, struggling to rebuild its trust. Mia, though, moved forward. She had gone to places she never thought she'd go, learned things about the world and about herself that were impossible to unlearn. The weight of it didn't lift, but she knew it had changed her. She could never go back to being the girl who just followed the rules, who kept her head down. She had found her voice, and no one could take that from her. Yet, as she walked the halls of her school, still haunted by the faces of those who remained in the shadows, she couldn't shake the feeling that there were more secrets waiting to be uncovered. The mayor was gone, but there were pieces of the puzzle left unfinished. The files she had copied, the dark history she had glimpsed, they were just fragments of something far bigger than she could have imagined. And then, on the day of her graduation, a message appeared on her phone. Just one line. "It's not over. The truth has only just begun." No name, no number, just the words that sent a chill down her spine.
Who could it be?
Was it someone from the mayor's camp trying to silence her? Or was it a warning? Mia knew the fight wasn't finished. The world had seen her fight for justice, but the battle had only shifted into a different arena. She wasn't done, and neither were the people who had tried to keep the truth buried. The road ahead wasn't clear, and for the first time in her life, Mia wasn't sure where it would lead. But one thing was certain, She was ready for whatever came next. As she looked out over the city from the balcony of her home, watching the sun set on the horizon, Mia let out a breath. The fight had taken its toll. But the truth was out there now, like a spark in the dark, and there would always be someone brave enough to fan the flames. Even when the world tried to forget, even when the shadows crept in again, the truth would keep calling. It had to. Because once you've seen it, once you've uncovered what's been hidden, you can't just walk away. And in that moment, Mia realized something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Sometimes, fighting for what's right doesn't bring peace. It just brings more questions. And for those brave enough to seek the answers, the journey was only just beginning.